The divorce papers landed on the kitchen table with a sound that broke her heart. "Sign them, Denise," Raymond said, his voice cold as winter. "I found someone better, someone richer. Janet's uncle left her $50 million. I'm not going to waste my life with a poor woman like you anymore." Before we dive into this unbelievable story, do me a huge favor. Smash that subscribe button and turn on all notifications so you never miss another story like this. And drop a comment right now telling me, where are you watching from? New York, Texas, California? Let me know your city or state. Now, let's get into it. Keisha Bryant stared at her husband of 15 years, the same man who had sworn to cherish her until death. The same man who had held her hand tight when her precious Uncle Theodore passed away just 3 weeks ago. Now he was discarding her like yesterday's trash. "But Tyrell," she whispered, tears streaming down her rich brown cheeks. "Uncle Theodore just died. I'm still mourning. How? Can you do this to me right now?" Tyrell let out a cold laugh. It was a cruel, ugly sound. "Your uncle was a maintenance man, Keisha. A maintenance man who lived in a cramped studio and wore the same beat-up shoes for a decade. He didn't leave you anything except dusty books and a busted watch. Veronica's uncle was a real winner. He built strip malls. He owned apartment buildings. Now Veronica has it all, and I want to be part of that." What Tyrell didn't realize, what nobody on this entire planet knew, except for 3 attorneys in a downtown law firm, was that Uncle Theodore had not been merely a maintenance man. Uncle Theodore had been the hidden proprietor of the largest technology corporation in America. Uncle Theodore had been worth $1.3 trillion, and he had bequeathed every single cent to his treasured niece, Keisha. But the attorneys had explicit instructions. They couldn't reveal Keisha's fortune to her until 30 days after Uncle Theodore's passing. That was still 7 days away. So there stood Keisha, the wealthiest woman in the nation, being kicked out of her own house by a money-hungry husband who assumed she was worthless. And standing in the entrance behind Tyrell, grinning like a viper, was Veronica Parker, the woman who had stolen her husband. Veronica wore a scarlet gown and gold accessories, and she stared at Keisha like she was filth on her costly shoes. "Speed it up, Tyrell," Veronica said, examining her long nails. "I want to redo this cramped place before we unload it. It's so tiny and hideous, just like the woman who lives here." Keisha's hands trembled as she grabbed for the pen. What happens next will absolutely blow your mind. But first, tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. Are you from Miami, Houston, Atlanta, or maybe somewhere else? I'd love to know. And if you're already hooked on this story, hit that like button right now. Let's rewind to where everything started. 6 months prior, life was uncomplicated and pleasant for Keisha Bryant. She woke up every morning at 5 a.m. in the modest home she shared with her husband, Tyrell, in the peaceful town of Pinehurst, North Carolina. It wasn't a luxurious house. The exterior paint was chipping on the front steps, and the kitchen tap leaked no matter how many times they repaired it. But Keisha cherished her home because it held precious memories. Keisha worked as a third-grade instructor at Pinehurst Elementary School. She had been teaching for 12 years, and she treasured every single day of it. Her students called her Miss Keisha, and they would sprint to embrace her whenever she entered through the school entrance. "Good morning, Miss Keisha," little Destiny would call out, her braids bouncing as she raced across the playground. "Good morning, precious girl," Keisha would respond, kneeling to give her a loving hug. "Are you ready to discover something amazing today?" Teaching didn't provide much income. Keisha earned just enough to contribute to expenses and put meals on the table. But she didn't care. She believed that the finest things in existence weren't possessions at all. The finest things were compassion, generosity, and the grin on a child's face when they finally grasped something new. Tyrell, her husband, worked as an automobile salesman at Premium Motors on the outskirts of town. He was a tall man with a polished voice and a smile that could sell anything to anyone. When Keisha first encountered him at a church social 16 years ago, she thought he was the most captivating man in existence. "You are the most stunning woman I have ever laid eyes on," Tyrell had told her that day, handing her a glass of sweet tea. "I'm going to marry you someday." And he did. 1 year later, they stood in that very same church and vowed to cherish each other forever. Through prosperous times and challenging times, through wellness and illness, through wealth and poverty. Keisha had taken those vows seriously. She had honored every single one, but Tyrell, it turned out, had not. For the first 10 years, their union was joyful. They couldn't have youngsters, which made Keisha heartbroken. But Tyrell had held her hand and told her it didn't matter. "We have each other," he would say. "That's sufficient for me." But something shifted in Tyrell. About 5 years ago, he started arriving home late from the dealership. He started griping about finances constantly. He would glance at their modest house and scowl. "Why can't we have luxury items?" he would demand. "Why can't we drive premium cars and take trips to the Bahamas as my supervisor does?" "Because we are fortunate with what we possess," Keisha would answer gently. "We have nourishment, we have shelter, we have love. That's more than many folks can claim." But Tyrell didn't want to hear it. He wanted more. He wanted grander. He wanted wealthier. Can you believe this man? Drop a like if you think Tyrell is making the biggest mistake of his life. And keep watching, because what Keisha doesn't know yet will change everything. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Now, the most significant person in Keisha's existence was her Uncle Theodore. Uncle Theodore was her mother's older sibling. He had raised Keisha after her parents perished in a vehicle accident when she was only 7 years old. He had worked as a maintenance man at a large corporate building in Charlotte, cleaning floors and emptying waste bins from 6 in the evening until 2 in the morning. Despite his hard labor, Uncle Theodore never seemed to have substantial funds. He resided in a cramped studio apartment with furniture older than Keisha herself. He wore the same 3 shirts and 2 pairs of trousers for as long as she could recall. His shoes had openings in them, but he refused to purchase new ones. "These shoes still function perfectly," he would say with a tender smile. "Why squander money on new ones when these take me where I need to go?" Every Sunday, Keisha would visit Uncle Theodore. She would bring him homemade peach cobbler, his favorite, and they would sit together viewing classic films on his tiny television that still had an antenna on top. "Uncle Theodore," Keisha asked him once, "why do you labor so intensely but never purchase yourself anything nice?" Uncle Theodore had looked at her with his profound, wise eyes that seemed to contain secrets as ancient as time. "Keisha, my precious girl," he said softly, "possessions don't make a person wealthy. Compassion makes a person wealthy. Generosity makes a person wealthy. Having individuals who care about you when you're unwell, who weep when you're sorrowful, who celebrate when you're joyful. That is genuine wealth. Everything else is just currency and metal." Keisha never forgot those words. She carried them in her heart like a treasure. What she didn't realize was that Uncle Theodore was also carrying a treasure. A very real, very enormous treasure that he had been building in at secrecy for 45 years. It all commenced when Uncle Theodore was 25 years old. Back then, he wasn't a maintenance man. He was a young man with a brilliant intellect for numbers and technology. He had invented a tiny piece of technology that made computers operate faster. He called it the Theodore processor. A major corporation wanted to purchase his invention. They offered him $1 million, which was more money than Uncle Theodore had ever imagined. But Uncle Theodore was intelligent. Instead of selling his invention, he launched his own company. He called it Tech Vision Solutions. But Uncle Theodore was also a reserved man. He didn't appreciate attention. He didn't appreciate cameras or journalists or people asking him questions. So he did something very uncommon. He hired other people to be the public face of his company. He remained concealed in the shadows, and nobody knew he was the actual owner. While the world assumed he was mopping floors, Uncle Theodore was actually operating the biggest tech company in the nation from his cramped apartment. He made decisions worth billions of dollars while wearing his old shirts and shabby shoes. He became a trillionaire, and nobody knew except his 3 trusted attorneys. Why did he continue working as a maintenance man? Because Uncle Theodore cherished his uncomplicated life. He cherished conversing with the security personnel and the late-night workers at the corporate building. He cherished being treated like a regular person, not like a billionaire whom everyone wanted something from. And now, Uncle Theodore was gone. He had departed peacefully in his sleep 3 weeks ago, with Keisha holding his hand. "Remember what I taught you," he had whispered to her in his final moments. "True wealth is not in your wallet. It is in your heart." If this story is touching your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And comment "blessed" and hit that subscribe button if you believe Uncle Theodore's wisdom is real. Keep watching because Keisha's about to discover the truth. Keisha had mourned for days. She missed her uncle more than words could express. And now, while she was still grieving, while her heart was still shattered, her husband was demanding a divorce. "I'm not going to ask you again," Terrell said, shoving the divorce papers toward her. "Sign them now, or I'll make this nasty." Veronica stepped into the kitchen, her high heels clicking on the floor. She looked around with revulsion. "This kitchen is so dated," she said, wrinkling her nose. "Terrell, sweetheart, why did you ever live in this dump?" "I had no choice," Terrell said. "But now I do. Veronica, your uncle's inheritance transformed everything. $50 million. Can you believe it?" Keisha looked up at Veronica. Something didn't feel right. Veronica had never mentioned a wealthy uncle before. In fact, Veronica had worked as a server at the restaurant across town just 2 months ago. Where had this wealthy uncle suddenly appeared from? But Keisha was too exhausted and too heartbroken to think about it. She just wanted this nightmare to end. "Fine," she whispered, picking up the pen. "I'll sign." Terrell smiled his slick salesman smile. "Smart choice, Keisha. Now you have 1 week to pack your belongings and vacate this house. It's in my name after all." Keisha signed her name at the bottom of the page. Her tears fell onto the paper, smudging the ink. She had just signed away 15 years of her life. She had nowhere to go and no one to turn to, or so she thought. Because in exactly 7 days, 3 attorneys in expensive suits would knock on her door with news that would transform everything. But first, Keisha would have to survive the most difficult week of her life. And what happened next would test her kindness, her faith, and her very soul. The moving truck pulled away from the house that had been Keisha's home for 15 years, leaving nothing but tire marks on the driveway and emptiness in her heart. She stood on the sidewalk with 2 suitcases and 3 cardboard boxes. That was all Tyrell had permitted her to take. Everything else, he said, belonged to him and his new bride, Veronica. Yes, his new bride. Tyrell had married Veronica just 4 days after the divorce was finalized. 4 days. 15 years of marriage discarded like garbage, and he couldn't even wait a single week before replacing her. The wedding had been at the fancy Lakeshore Country Club, the one Keisha had always dreamed of visiting, but could never afford. Veronica had posted pictures all over social media. She wore a white gown covered in crystals that must have cost more than Keisha earned in a whole year. Tyrell wore a new designer suit and a smile so wide it looked painted on his face. Under one of the pictures, Veronica had written, "Finally living the life I deserve with the man of my dreams. Money can't buy happiness, but it sure makes happiness more comfortable." Keisha had seen the pictures because her so-called friends kept sending them to her. "Just thought you should know," they would say, as if watching her heart break into smaller pieces was somehow helpful. Now, here she was, homeless and alone, with nowhere to go. "Excuse me, ma'am." Keisha turned around to see a small boy standing behind her. He looked about 8 years old with big brown eyes and clothes that were too big for his thin body. He was holding a cardboard sign that said, "Hungry. Please help." "Are you okay?" the little boy asked. "You look sad." Keisha almost laughed. Here she was feeling sorry for herself, and this child, who had nothing, was asking if she was okay. "I'm fine, sweetheart," she said, kneeling to look him in the eyes. "What's your name?" "Jamal," the boy said. Then he quickly shook his head. My name is Theodore. People call me different names sometimes, but my mama named me Theodore." "That's a beautiful name," Keisha said. "Theodore, where is your mama?" The boy's eyes filled with tears. "She's sick. Really sick. We live in the shelter on Pine Street, but the shelter is closing next week because it doesn't have enough money. I don't know where we're going to go." Keisha's heart broke all over again. But this time, it wasn't breaking for her. It was breaking for this little boy and his sick mother. She reached into her purse and pulled out her wallet. Inside was $47. It was all the money she had left in the world until her next paycheck from the school. She gave Theodore $20. "Here, sweetheart," she said. "Get some food for you and your mama." Theodore's eyes went wide. "20 whole dollars? Are you sure, lady? That's a lot of money." "I'm sure," Keisha said, smiling through her own tears. "And my name is Keisha, not lady." Theodore threw his arms around her and hugged her tight. "Thank you, Miss Keisha. Thank you so much. God is going to bless you for this. My mama always says that when you help others, blessings come back to you multiplied," as Theodore ran off down the street. Keisha wiped her eyes and picked up her suitcases. She didn't know where she was going to sleep tonight, but somehow giving that little boy $20 had made her feel better. Uncle Theodore was right. True wealth was in the heart, not in the wallet. This is what real kindness looks like, even when you have nothing. Hit that like button if this moment touched you. And let me know in the comments, would you have done the same thing? Where are you watching from? She started walking down the street, dragging her suitcases behind her. The wheels made a loud rumbling sound on the concrete. "Keisha! Keisha Bryant!" She turned to see an elderly woman hurrying toward her from across the street. It was Mrs. Dorothy Jenkins, the oldest member of her church. Mrs. Jenkins was 87 years old, with silver hair and skin like rich mahogany. She had been friends with Uncle Theodore for over 50 years. "Child, what are you doing out here with all these bags?" Mrs. Jenkins asked, breathing hard from her short run. Keisha didn't want to burden the old woman with her problems. "I'm just moving, Mrs. Jenkins. Nothing to worry about." But Mrs. Jenkins wasn't fooled. She had lived too long and seen too much to be fooled by a brave face. "I heard what that no-good husband of yours did," she said, shaking her head. "The whole church is talking about it. Divorcing you while you're still grieving your uncle, marrying that woman 4 days later. That man has lost his mind and his soul." "Please, Mrs. Jenkins," Keisha said quietly. "I don't want to talk about it." Mrs. Jenkins took Keisha's hands in her wrinkled ones. "Then don't talk. Just listen. You're coming to stay with me. I have a spare bedroom that's been empty for too long. Theodore would never forgive me if I let his niece sleep on the street. I couldn't possibly impose on you like that," Keisha said. "Impose, child? You'd be doing me a favor. These old bones get lonely. Now pick up those bags and follow me. I made gumbo this morning, and I have way too much for one person." Keisha wanted to argue, but she had nowhere else to go, and the mention of gumbo made her stomach growl. She hadn't eaten anything all day. "Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins," she whispered. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "You'll repay me by remembering this kindness and passing it on to someone else one day," Mrs. Jenkins said. "That's how kindness works. It's not a debt to be repaid. It's a gift to be passed on." That night, Keisha sat at Mrs. Jenkins's kitchen table, eating the best gumbo she had ever tasted. The old woman's house was small but warm, filled with pictures of family members and religious paintings on every wall. "You know," Mrs. Jenkins said, pouring Keisha a cup of tea, "your Uncle Theodore was a very special man." "I know," Keisha said sadly. "I miss him so much." "I mean, very special," Mrs. Jenkins repeated, giving Keisha a meaningful look. "More special than you know." Keisha tilted her head. "What do you mean, Mrs. Jenkins?" The old woman smiled mysteriously. "Theodore and I were friends for 55 years. We told each other everything, and I mean everything." Keisha felt her heart beat faster. "Mrs. Jenkins, do you know something about Uncle Theodore that I don't know?" Mrs. Jenkins opened her mouth to answer, but then she closed it again. She looked at the clock on the wall and shook her head. "It's not my place to say," she finally answered. "But I'll tell you this, child. Your uncle loved you more than anything in this world, more than his own life. Everything he did, every choice he made, was for you. And very soon, you're going to understand exactly what that means. Please, Mrs. Jenkins," Keisha begged. "If you know something, tell me." But the old woman just patted her hand. "Some stories must unfold in their own time. Your uncle had a plan, and I'm not going to be the one to mess it up. Now, drink your tea and get some sleep. You've had a long, hard day. What secret is Mrs. Jenkins keeping? Comment your theories below. And if you're still watching, drop a like and tell me where you're tuning in from. This story is about to get wild." The next morning, Keisha woke up to the sound of loud voices outside. She jumped out of bed and ran to the window. What she saw made her blood run cold. Tyrell's expensive new car was parked in front of Mrs. Jenkins's house, and Tyrell himself was standing on the front lawn, arguing with Mrs. Jenkins, waving a piece of paper in the air. "I know she's in there," Tyrell shouted, "and she owes me money. This paper proves it." "Boy, you'd better get off my property before I call the police," Mrs. Jenkins shouted back, standing her ground like a tiny soldier. Keisha threw on her robe and ran downstairs. She burst through the front door and stepped onto the porch. "Tyrell, what are you doing here? What's going on?" Tyrell turned to face her with an ugly sneer on his face. Veronica was sitting in the passenger seat of the car, watching with amusement like it were a television show. "There you are," Tyrell said. I had my lawyer look over our divorce papers again. Turns out you signed something you shouldn't have signed. You owe me half of everything you earn for the next 5 years. That includes your teacher's salary, Keisha. You're going to be paying me money every month. Keisha felt dizzy. What? That can't be true. I didn't agree to that. You signed the papers, Tyrell laughed. You didn't even read them, did you? You were so busy crying that you just signed whatever I put in front of you. Stupid, stupid Keisha. You always were too trusting for your own good. Mrs. Jenkins stepped forward, her eyes blazing with anger. You're a snake, Tyrell Bryant. A dirty, low-down snake. Your mama must be spinning in her grave, watching you treat people this way. Stay out of this, old woman, Tyrell snapped. This is between my ex-wife and me. Former wife, Keisha said quietly, finding strength she didn't know she had. And I don't believe you, Tyrell. I'm going to get a lawyer and fight this. With what money? Tyrell laughed. You gave $20 to some homeless kid yesterday. Yes, I saw you. Always giving away money you don't have to people who don't deserve it. That's your problem, Keisha. You're too soft, too kind, and kind people always finish last. Veronica honked the car horn. Tyrell, baby, hurry up. We have brunch reservations at the country club. Tyrell started walking back to his car. You've been served, Keisha. My lawyer will be in touch. Enjoy your little life in this little house with this little old lady. While you're struggling to pay me every month, Veronica and I will be living like royalty. He got in the car and drove away, leaving a cloud of dust behind him. I know you're probably furious right now. Comment karma. If you think Tyrell has something major coming to him, and if you haven't hit subscribe yet, do it now. And don't forget to like. Where are you watching from today? Keisha sank onto the porch steps, her whole body shaking. Child, don't you let that man steal your peace, Mrs. Jenkins said, sitting down beside her. He's a fool, and fools always get what's coming to them eventually. But what am I going to do? Keisha cried. I barely make enough money to survive. If I have to pay him every month, I'll have nothing left. Mrs. Jenkins put her arm around Keisha's shoulders. Listen to me carefully. In 3 more days, everything is going to change. Everything. I can't tell you how or why, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Can you hold on for 3 more days? Keisha looked at the old woman's kind face. She thought about Uncle Theodore and his mysterious ways. She thought about his last words to her about true wealth being in the heart. I'll try, she whispered. Good, Mrs. Jenkins said. Now come inside. We need to eat breakfast and get you ready for work. Those 3rd graders are counting on you. The next 3 days were the hardest of Keisha's life. At school, she tried to focus on her students, but her mind kept wandering to her problems. How would she pay Tyrell? Where would she live if Mrs. Jenkins got tired of her? What was she going to do? But then, little Destiny would run up to her with a drawing, or shy Marcus would finally raise his hand to answer a question, or the whole class would burst out laughing at one of her silly jokes. And for those moments, Keisha would forget her troubles and remember why she became a teacher in the first place. On the 2nd day, something strange happened. Keisha was eating lunch alone in her classroom when there was a knock at the door. She looked up to see a man in an expensive suit standing in the doorway. He was tall with gray hair and glasses, and he carried a leather briefcase that looked like it cost more than her car. Miss Keisha Bryant? He asked. Yes, that's me, she said nervously. Can I help you? The man smiled. My name is Benjamin Crawford. I'm an attorney. Was wondering if you have a few minutes to talk about your Uncle Theodore. Keisha's heart started pounding. My uncle? What about him? Mr. Crawford looked around the classroom to make sure they were alone. Then he leaned closer and spoke in a quiet voice. Miss Bryant, I represent your uncle's estate. There are some very important matters we need to discuss, but I'm afraid I can't tell you anything more until the proper time. I just wanted to introduce myself and let you know that we'll be contacting you very soon. What kind of matters? Keisha asked, her voice shaking. Please, Mr. Crawford, I'm going through a very difficult time right now. If you know something that can help me, please tell me. Mr. Crawford looked genuinely sorry. I wish I could, Miss Bryant. I truly do. But your uncle was very specific in his instructions. We must wait until exactly 30 days after his passing. That will be tomorrow at noon. Tomorrow? Keisha gasped. Yes, ma'am. Tomorrow at noon, my colleagues will come to wherever you're staying with some news. News that will change your life forever. Before Keisha could ask any more questions, Mr. Crawford tipped his hat and walked out of the classroom, leaving her sitting there with her mouth hanging open. That night, Keisha couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, wondering what news the lawyer could have. Had Uncle Theodore left her something in his will? Maybe his old furniture, his collection of books, his broken watch. Whatever it was, it would be a precious reminder of the man who had raised her. The morning came slowly, like it was taking its time on purpose. Keisha got dressed for school, but Mrs. Jenkins stopped her at the door. No school for you today, child, the old woman said with a knowing smile. I already called the principal and told them you had important family business. Now sit down and eat some breakfast. You're going to need your strength. Mrs. Jenkins, what's going on? Keisha demanded. You know something. Mr. Crawford knows something. Everyone seems to know something except me. Mrs. Jenkins just smiled and handed her a plate of pancakes. At exactly noon, there was a knock at the door. Keisha opened it to find not just Mr. Crawford, but two other lawyers standing beside him. They were all dressed in expensive suits and carried thick folders full of papers. Miss Bryant, Mr. Crawford said formally. May we come in? Of course, Keisha said, stepping aside. The three lawyers walked into the living room and sat down on Mrs. Jenkins's old sofa. Mr. Crawford placed his briefcase on the coffee table and opened it slowly. Miss Bryant, he began, what I'm about to tell you is going to be very difficult to believe. I need you to sit down and prepare yourself. Keisha sat in the armchair across from them. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it might burst out of her chest. Your Uncle Theodore James Bryant was not just a maintenance man, Mr. Crawford said. I know, Keisha said softly. He was the best man I ever knew. He was also, Mr. Crawford continued, the sole owner and founder of Tech Vision Solutions. Keisha blinked. I'm sorry, what? Tech Vision Solutions. You mean the technology company? The one that makes computer processors for every phone and computer in the world? The very same, Mr. Crawford said. Your uncle started that company 45 years ago. He kept his ownership completely secret. He never wanted fame or attention. He just wanted to live a simple life and help people without them knowing. Keisha shook her head. No, that's impossible. Uncle Theodore was poor. He had nothing. He lived in a tiny apartment and wore old clothes. Because that's how he wanted to live, Mr. Crawford explained, not because he had to. Miss Bryant, your uncle was worth approximately $1.3 trillion at the time of his death, and he left every single penny of it to you. The room started spinning. Keisha grabbed the arms of the chair to keep herself from falling. $1.3 trillion, she whispered. Yes, ma'am. That makes you the richest woman in America. Actually, the richest woman in the world. Oh, my God. Comment "no way" if your jaw just dropped. Hit that like button and subscribe if you can't believe what just happened. And tell me, where are you watching this from right now? Keisha looked at Mrs. Jenkins, who was standing in the doorway with tears streaming down her face. I knew, the old woman said. Theodore told me years ago. I wanted to tell you so badly, especially when that fool Tyrell was mistreating you. But Theodore made me promise to keep his secret. Keisha turned back to the lawyers. This has to be a mistake. There has to be some mistake. Mr. Crawford pulled a piece of paper from his briefcase. This is a letter from your uncle. He wrote it himself. He wanted you to read it after you learned the truth. With trembling hands, Keisha took the letter and began to read. My dearest Keisha, if you are reading this, then I have passed on to the next life, and you have learned my secret. I'm sorry I kept this from you. But I needed to know that you would become the woman you are because of love, not because of money. And you did, my sweet girl. You became the kindest, most loving person I have ever known. I watched you struggle and never complain. I watched you give your last dollar to people in need. I watched you love that husband of yours, even when he didn't deserve it. You have proven to me that you are ready for this responsibility. Use this money wisely, Keisha. Help people who can't help themselves. Build schools. Feed the hungry. House the homeless. Be the change that this world so desperately needs. And remember, my darling niece, money is just a tool. True wealth is still in your heart. Never let the numbers in your bank account change who you are. I love you forever and always, Uncle Theodore. Keisha finished reading and broke down sobbing. She cried for her uncle. She cried for herself. She cried because she couldn't believe what was happening. And then, in the middle of her tears, she started laughing. What's funny, child? Mrs. Jenkins asked, concerned. Keisha wiped her eyes and looked at the lawyers. Gentlemen, I have a question. That paper my ex-husband made me sign, the one that says I owe him half my earnings for the next 5 years, does that include this inheritance? Mr. Crawford smiled. No, ma'am. That agreement specifically mentions your salary from employment. An inheritance is not employment income. It's a gift. Your ex-husband has no legal claim to any of your uncle's money. Keisha laughed again, harder this time. Oh, Tyrell is going to be so upset when he finds out. But then a new thought crossed her mind, a thought that made her stop laughing. Tyrell didn't know about the inheritance yet. Nobody did except the people in this room. What if she kept it that way? What if she stayed in the shadows, just like Uncle Theodore had done? What if she watched and waited to see how Tyrell and Veronica really behaved when they thought she was still poor? And most importantly, what if there was something fishy about Veronica's so-called inheritance? Mrs. Jenkins had said that fools always get what's coming to them eventually. Maybe it was time to help that process along. Mr. Crawford, Keisha said slowly, I don't want anyone to know about this inheritance yet. Can we keep it secret for a little while longer? Mr. Crawford raised an eyebrow. That's certainly your choice, Miss Bryant. May I ask why? Keisha smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it was a real smile. Because I have a feeling that something's not right with my ex-husband's new wife. And I want to find out the truth before anyone knows that I have the resources to find it. Just then, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Tyrell. The message read, "Court date set for next week to finalize alimony payments. Get ready to start paying up, Keisha. Veronica and I are going to enjoy spending your money." Keisha showed the message to the lawyers. Then she looked at Mrs. Jenkins. "Something tells me that Veronica's $50 million inheritance isn't what it seems," Keisha said. "And I'm going to find out exactly where that money really came from." What Keisha didn't know was that Veronica Parker had a secret even bigger than Uncle Theodore's. A secret that involved lies, theft, and a very dangerous man who was already looking for his stolen money. And that dangerous man was about to come to Pinehurst. The black SUV with tinted windows rolled slowly down Pine Street, stopping in front of Mrs. Jenkins's little house. Inside the vehicle sat a man named Marcus Steele. He was a tall man with a shaved head and a scar that ran from his left eyebrow down to his chin. His eyes were cold like a shark's eyes, and when he smiled, it made people want to run away. Marcus Steele was not a good man. He was a criminal who had spent 20 years building an empire of lies and stolen money. He ran fake investment schemes, tricking innocent people into giving him their life savings. Then he would disappear with their money, leaving them with nothing. 3 months ago, someone had stolen $50 million from Marcus Steele, and Marcus Steele wanted it back. He looked at the photograph in his hand. It showed a woman with a bright smile and fancy clothes, a woman named Veronica Parker. "So this is where her husband's ex-wife lives," Marcus said to the driver. "Interesting. Boss, are you sure Veronica is the one who took your money?" the driver asked nervously. "She seemed so nice when she worked for you." Marcus laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Nice? Veronica Parker is a snake. She worked as my assistant for 2 years. She learned all my secrets, all my account numbers, all my passwords. Then one day, she disappeared with $50 million of my money." "But how did she get away with it?" "She created fake documents," Marcus explained. "She made it look like some dead man named Gerald Parker left her an inheritance. She even forged a death certificate and a will. Very clever, very, very clever." The driver looked confused. "So Gerald Parker never existed?" "Oh, he existed," Marcus said. "He was a real man who died 10 years ago in Arizona. Veronica found his name in old records and used his identity. She created a whole fake story about being his long-lost niece. Then she moved the money into accounts under that fake inheritance." Marcus crumpled the photograph in his fist. "She thought she could hide from me. She thought she could steal my money and live happily ever after with some foolish car salesman. But nobody steals from Marcus Steele. Nobody." He opened the car door and stepped out onto the sidewalk. "Wait here. I'm going to have a little conversation with someone who might know where Veronica likes to spend her time." Inside the house, Keisha had no idea that danger was standing just 50 feet away. She was sitting at Mrs. Jenkins's kitchen table with Mr. Crawford and his team of lawyers. Spread out before them were papers, photographs, and computer printouts. They had been investigating Veronica Parker for 3 days now, and what they had found was shocking. Veronica Parker has no uncle named Gerald Parker, Mr. Crawford explained, pointing to a document. "We checked every record we could find. Gerald Parker was a real person, but he died in Arizona 10 years ago with no living relatives. He was a retired postal worker who left behind exactly $387 in his bank account." Keisha shook her head in disbelief. So the whole inheritance story was a lie? "Completely fabricated," Mr. Crawford confirmed. "But here's where it gets interesting. We traced the $50 million in Veronica's accounts. It didn't come from any legitimate inheritance. It came from a series of shell companies that are connected to organized crime. Mrs. Jenkins gasped from her chair in the corner. Lord, have mercy. That woman is mixed up with criminals. It appears so, Mr. Crawford said grimly. We believe Veronica stole this money from someone very dangerous, someone who is probably looking for her right now. Keisha felt a chill run down her spine. Tyrell had married a thief who had stolen from criminals, and now Tyrell was connected to all of it. What should we do? Keisha asked. Before Mr. Crawford could answer, there was a loud knock at the front door. Everyone froze. Are you expecting anyone? Mr. Crawford whispered to Mrs. Jenkins. The old woman shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. I'll see who it is, Keisha said, standing up slowly. Be careful, Mr. Crawford warned. Keisha walked to the front door and looked through the peephole. She saw a tall man with a shaved head and a scar on his face. He was wearing an expensive suit and had the coldest eyes she had ever seen. She didn't open the door. Can I help you? She called through the door. Good afternoon, the man said in a smooth voice. My name is Marcus Steele. I'm looking for information about a woman named Veronica Parker. I believe she recently married a man who used to be your husband. Keisha's heart was pounding, but she kept her voice calm. I don't know anyone named Veronica Parker. Marcus Steele smiled that terrible smile. I think you do, Miss Bryant. I think you know exactly who she is, and I think you want to see her get what she deserves, just like I do. Through the peephole, Keisha watched the man reach into his jacket pocket. For a terrifying moment, she thought he was reaching for a gun. Instead, he pulled out a business card. I'm going to leave my card in your mailbox, Marcus said. If you decide you want to talk, call me. I have a feeling we could help each other. He slipped the card into the mailbox and walked back to his SUV. A moment later, the vehicle drove away. Keisha let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. She turned to find Mr. Crawford and Mrs. Jenkins standing right behind her. Who was that? Mrs. Jenkins asked, her voice shaking. Trouble, Keisha answered. Big trouble. This is getting intense. Drop a like if your heart is racing. Comment where you're watching from and whether you think Keisha should help this dangerous man. Keep watching. This story is about to explode. That evening, Keisha sat alone on Mrs. Jenkins's back porch, thinking about everything that had happened. Just 1 week ago, she had been a poor schoolteacher with a broken heart. Now she was the richest woman in the world. Her ex-husband had married a criminal, and a dangerous man was circling like a shark, smelling blood. Uncle Theodore, she thought, I really wish you were here to tell me what to do. As if in answer to her prayer, she heard a small voice from the backyard. Miss Keisha, is that you? She looked up to see little Theodore climbing over the back fence. His clothes were even dirtier than before, and there were tear tracks on his dusty cheeks. Theodore. Keisha jumped up and ran to help him over the fence. What are you doing here? How did you find me? I asked people, Theodore said, his bottom lip trembling. I asked everyone in town where the nice teacher lady with the kind eyes lived. I had to find you, Miss Keisha. Something bad happened. Keisha knelt and took the boy's hands. What happened, sweetheart? Tell me everything. The shelter closed, Theodore cried. They said they don't have enough money to stay open anymore. Everyone had to leave. My mama is so sick, Miss Keisha. She can't walk very far. We've been sleeping in the park for 2 nights. I didn't know where else to go. Keisha felt her heart shatter into a million pieces. A sick woman and her child were sleeping in the park like stray animals, while Tyrell and Veronica were living in luxury at the country club. "Where is your mama now?" Keisha asked urgently. "She's still at the park. She told me to try to find food, but I couldn't find any, Miss Keisha. I couldn't find anything." Keisha stood up with determination burning in her chest. She had $1.3 trillion. She couldn't save the whole world tonight, but she could save this little boy and his mother. "Theodore, you're going to take me to your mama right now. You're not sleeping in that park ever again. Do you understand me?" Theodore's eyes went wide. "Really? You're going to help us?" "Really," Keisha said firmly. "Now let's go." She grabbed her purse and headed for the front door. Mrs. Jenkins was sitting in her rocking chair, watching the evening news. "Mrs. Jenkins, I need to go out for a little while. There's a child who needs my help." The old woman smiled knowingly. "You're just like your uncle, child. He could never turn away from someone in need either. Go do what you need to do. I'll keep your supper warm." 20 minutes later, Keisha found Theodore's mother lying on a bench in Pinehurst Park. Her name was Jasmine, and she was only 32 years old. But sickness had made her look much older. Her dark skin was pale and sweaty, and she was shivering even though the evening was warm. "Ma'am, my name is Keisha Bryant," Keisha said gently, kneeling beside the bench. "I'm a friend of Theodore's. I'm going to take you somewhere safe." Jasmine opened her tired eyes and looked at Keisha. "You're the lady who gave my boy $20, she whispered. "He told me about you. Said you were an angel." "I'm no angel," Keisha said, her voice cracking with emotion. "I'm just someone who wants to help. Can you stand up if we help you?" With Keisha on one side and little Theodore on the other, they managed to get Jasmine to her feet. Slowly, carefully, they walked the 6 blocks back to Mrs. Jenkins's house. Mrs. Jenkins took one look at Jasmine and immediately went into action. "Bring her to the spare bedroom. Theodore, go wash your hands. I'm going to make some soup." For the next 3 hours, Keisha and Mrs. Jenkins took care of Jasmine and her son. They gave Jasmine warm soup and medicine. They bathed Theodore and found some old clothes that had belonged to Mrs. Jenkins's grandson. By 9, both mother and child were sleeping peacefully in the spare bedroom. Keisha stood in the doorway, watching them sleep. Jasmine's arm was wrapped protectively around Theodore, and for the first time since Keisha had met him, the little boy looked at peace. "You did a good thing tonight," Mrs. Jenkins said softly, coming to stand beside her. "It's not enough," Keisha replied. "That shelter closing put dozens of families on the street. How many other children are sleeping in parks tonight? How many other mothers are too sick to take care of their babies?" Mrs. Jenkins patted her arm. "You can't save everyone in one night, child, but you can start somewhere. And you have more resources now than you ever dreamed of. Your uncle gave you those resources for a reason." Keisha nodded slowly, a plan forming in her mind. "I want to reopen that shelter. Actually, I want to do more than that. I want to build a new shelter, bigger and better, with a medical clinic inside so mothers like Jasmine can get the help they need." "That sounds like something Theodore would have done," Mrs. Jenkins said with approval. "But first," Keisha continued, her eyes hardening, "I need to deal with Tyrell and Veronica. They need to face consequences for what they've done. Veronica stole that money from a dangerous criminal. If Marcus Steele finds them before the police do, who knows what might happen? Are you worried about Tyrell?" Mrs. Jenkins asked carefully. Keisha thought about the question for a long moment. Tyrell had treated her terribly. He had thrown away 15 years of marriage like it meant nothing. He had tried to steal her salary through lies and legal tricks. He had called her stupid and laughed at her tears. But once upon a time, she had loved him. Once upon a time, he had been a good man. Or at least she had believed he was. "I'm not worried about Tyrell," Keisha finally said. "But I'm not going to let him get hurt either. Uncle Theodore taught me that kindness is not about what people deserve. It's about who I choose to be. And I choose to be someone who does the right thing, even for people who have done me wrong." Mrs. Jenkins hugged her tightly. "Theodore would be so proud of you right now." If Keisha's heart is inspiring you, please share this video. Comment, "Kindness wins," if you believe in doing what's right even when it's hard. Where are you watching from? Let me know. The next morning, Keisha woke up early and made a decision. She was going to confront Tyrell and Veronica. She was going to tell them about Marcus Steele. She was going to give them a chance to do the right thing and turn themselves in to the police before the dangerous criminal found them. She wasn't doing it for Tyrell. She was doing it because it was right. Mr. Crawford had given her the address of the fancy new house Tyrell and Veronica had rented with Veronica's stolen money. It was in the wealthiest neighborhood in Pinehurst, a place called Emerald Hills, where all the houses had swimming pools and 3-car garages. Keisha borrowed Mrs. Jenkins's old station wagon and drove across town. As she pulled into Emerald Hills, she felt out of place. The other cars on the street were BMWs and Mercedes. Mrs. Jenkins' station wagon looked like a dinosaur among them. She found the house and parked in the driveway. It was a beautiful 2-story home with white columns and a perfectly manicured lawn. Rose bushes lined the walkway, and a fountain shaped as a dolphin stood in the center of the front yard. Keisha walked to the front door and rang the bell. No answer. She rang again. Still nothing. She was about to leave when she noticed that the front door wasn't completely closed. It was open just a crack, like someone had left in a hurry and forgot to shut it all the way. A bad feeling settled in her stomach. "Hello?" she called out, pushing the door open slightly. "Tyrell? Veronica? Is anyone home?" Keisha stepped inside the house. The first thing she noticed was that everything was a mess. Furniture was overturned. The lamps were broken. Papers were scattered across the floor like someone had been searching for something. "Tyrell?" she called again, her voice shaking now. She walked through the living room and into the kitchen. What she saw there made her scream. Tyrell was lying on the kitchen floor, unconscious. There was blood on his forehead, and his hands were tied behind his back with rope. But there was no sign of Veronica anywhere. Keisha rushed to Tyrell's side and checked his pulse. He was alive, thank God. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911. "This is 911. What's your emergency?" "I need an ambulance and police at 842 Emerald Hills Drive," Keisha said urgently. "A man has been attacked. He's unconscious and bleeding." "Help is on the way, ma'am. Please stay on the line." While waiting for help to arrive, Keisha noticed a piece of paper clutched in Tyrell's tied hands. She carefully pulled it free and read what was written on it. The note said, "You have 48 hours to return my money. $50 million or Veronica dies. Don't call the police. I'm watching." Keisha's blood ran cold. Marcus Steele had Veronica, and somehow it was up to Keisha to decide what to do next. The sound of sirens filled the air as police cars and an ambulance pulled into the driveway. Keisha quickly hid the note in her pocket. She didn't know why she did it. Maybe because she was afraid of what Marcus Steele would do to Veronica if he found out the police were involved. Veronica was a thief and a liar. She had helped destroy Keisha's marriage. She had broken up a family without a second thought. But did she deserve to die for it? Keisha looked down at Tyrell's unconscious face. Even after everything he had done, she didn't want to see him hurt. And as much as she wanted to hate Veronica, she didn't want to see her murdered either. Uncle Theodore's voice echoed in her mind. Kindness is not about what people deserve. It's about who you choose to be. Keisha made her choice. She was going to save Veronica Parker, but she was going to do it her way. The paramedics rushed in and began working on Tyrell. A police officer approached Keisha with a notepad. "Ma'am, can you tell me what happened here?" Keisha took a deep breath. "I came to visit my ex-husband. The door was open. I found him like this." "Did you see anyone else? Any signs of who might have done this?" Keisha thought about the note in her pocket. She thought about Marcus Steele and his cold shark eyes. She thought about Veronica somewhere out there, probably terrified for her life. "No," Keisha lied. "I didn't see anything." The officer nodded and wrote something in his notepad. "We'll need you to come to the station later to give a full statement." "Of course," Keisha said. As the paramedics loaded Tyrell into the ambulance, Keisha slipped away to her car. She had 48 hours to figure out how to save a woman who had ruined her life, and she had $1.3 trillion to do it with. Marcus Steele had no idea who he was dealing with. The warehouse on the outskirts of Pinehurst had been abandoned for 15 years. Its windows were broken, its walls were covered in graffiti, and rats scurried through its dark corners. It was the perfect place to hide someone you didn't want found. Veronica Parker sat tied to a chair in the middle of the warehouse floor. Her designer dress torn and dirty, her expensive makeup smeared with tears. The woman who had once looked at Keisha like she was dirt now looked like a frightened animal caught in a trap. Marcus Steele circled her slowly, like a predator enjoying the fear of its prey. $50 million, Veronica, he said calmly. That's all I want. Give me back my money and I'll let you go. Simple as that. I don't have it anymore. Veronica sobbed. I spent some of it. The rest is in accounts that I can't access. Quickly. Please, Marcus, you have to give me more time. Marcus stopped circling and leaned down until his face was inches from hers. You had 2 years to enjoy my money. 2 years of fancy clothes and expensive restaurants and that foolish husband of yours. Time's up, Veronica. Tyrell will pay you, Veronica begged. He'll find a way. He loves me. He'll do anything to save me. Marcus laughed cruelly. Tyrell, the car salesman? The man who divorced his loyal wife for a woman he barely knew? That Tyrell? Let me tell you something about men like Tyrell, Veronica. They love money. They love status. They love themselves. But they don't love anyone else. When he finds out how much trouble you've brought to his door, he'll run away so fast you'll think he never existed. Veronica's crying grew louder. Deep down, she knew Marcus was right. Tyrell had never really loved her. He had loved the idea of her money. Without the money, she was nothing to him. Meanwhile, across town, Keisha was putting her plan into action. She sat in a conference room at Mr. Crawford's law office with the 3 lawyers, 2 private investigators, and a woman named Agent Lisa Morgan from the FBI. Agent Morgan was a tall woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had been investigating Marcus Steele for 5 years and had never been able to catch him. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Agent Morgan said, looking at Keisha with a mixture of surprise and respect. You want to help us catch Marcus Steele, even though the woman he kidnapped helped destroy your marriage? That's correct, Keisha said firmly. And you're willing to use your own money as bait? Also correct. Agent Morgan shook her head in amazement. I've been doing this job for 23 years, Miss Bryant. I've never met anyone quite like you. My uncle taught me that doing the right thing is not always easy. Keisha explained, but it's always right. Veronica Parker is a thief and a liar, but she doesn't deserve to be murdered. And Marcus Steele has hurt too many innocent people. It's time for him to face justice. Mr. Crawford spread a map of Pinehurst on the conference table. Our investigators have been tracking Marcus Steele's movements. We believe he's holding Veronica in the old Montgomery warehouse on Industrial Boulevard. That warehouse has been empty for years, Agent Morgan noted. It's the perfect hideout. Multiple exits, no nearby neighbors, easy to spot anyone approaching. Which is why we're not going to approach, Keisha said. We're going to make Marcus come to us. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. It rang 3 times before a cold voice answered. Miss Bryant, I was hoping you would call. Mr. Steele, Keisha said, keeping her voice steady even though her hands were trembling. I have a business proposition for you. There was a pause. I'm listening. I know you want your $50 million back. Veronica doesn't have it anymore, but I can get it. For you. Marcus laughed. You, a school teacher? Where would you get $50 million? This was the moment Keisha had been preparing for. She took a deep breath and played her card. My uncle was Theodore James Bryant. He was the secret owner of Tech Vision Solutions. He left me his entire fortune when he died last month. I'm worth $1.3 trillion, Mr. Steele. $50 million is pocket change to me. The silence on the other end of the phone stretched for a long moment. You're lying, Marcus finally said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. Call your contacts, check the records, do whatever you need to do to verify what I'm telling you. I'll wait. More silence. Then Marcus spoke again, his voice different now, interested, greedy. If what you're saying is true, why would you pay $50 million to save a woman who stole your husband? Because unlike you, Mr. Steele, I don't let hate control my decisions. And because I want something from you in return. What could you possibly want from me? I want you to turn yourself into the police, Keisha said. I'll pay you the $50 million. You'll release Veronica unharmed, and then you'll surrender to the authorities and confess to your crimes. Marcus burst out laughing. You must be joking. Why would I surrender when I could just take your money and disappear? Because if you don't surrender, I will spend every dollar of my fortune hunting you down. I'll hire the best investigators in the world. I'll put a bounty on your head so large that your own mother would turn you in. I'll make sure you never have a moment of peace for the rest of your miserable life. Keisha paused to let her words sink in. But if you surrender, she continued, I'll hire the best lawyers to defend you. I'll make sure you get a fair trial, and I'll put money in a trust fund that will be waiting for you when you get out of prison. You're 47 years old, Mr. Steele. If you surrender now and cooperate with authorities, you might serve 15 years and be out by 62. Still young enough to enjoy the money, still alive and free. Or, Marcus said slowly, I could just kill Veronica, take your money, and make you regret ever threatening me. You could try, Keisha agreed, but I've already given all the evidence of your crimes to the FBI. They know where you are. They know what you've done. If anything happens to Veronica or to me, 100 federal agents will come down on you within the hour. You'll never see the outside of a prison cell again. Marcus was quiet for so long that Keisha thought he might have hung up. Finally, he spoke. You're not what I expected, Miss Bryant. Few people are what we expect, Mr. Steele. That's what makes life interesting. Do we have a deal? Another long pause. I need to think about it. I'll call you back in 1 hour. The line went dead. Keisha lowered her phone and let out a shaky breath. Her whole body was trembling now that the call was over. Agent Morgan looked at her with new respect. That was incredibly brave, Miss Bryant, and incredibly risky. Marcus Steele is not the type of man who responds well to threats. It wasn't a threat, Keisha said quietly. It was the truth. I meant every word. And if he calls your bluff? If he decides to hurt Veronica anyway? Keisha looked at the agent with steel in her eyes. Then we go to Plan B. Plan B was already in motion. While Keisha was negotiating with Marcus Steele, a team of private security contractors hired by Mr. Crawford was quietly surrounding the Montgomery warehouse. These weren't ordinary security guards. They were former Special Forces soldiers, the best in the world at hostage rescue. Inside the warehouse, Marcus Steele ended his call with Keisha and stared at his phone in disbelief. $1.3 trillion. He had kidnapped Veronica Parker for $50 million, thinking it was a fortune. But compared to what Keisha Bryant had, it was nothing. A drop in an ocean. Who was that? Veronica asked weakly from her chair. Marcus ignored her. His mind was racing with possibilities. If Keisha Bryant was really that rich, then $50 million was just the beginning. He could get more, much more. All he had to do was play his cards right. He pulled out his phone again and made a call to one of his contacts, a hacker who could access financial records. I need you to verify something for me. The inheritance records for a man named Theodore James Bryant, owner of Tech Vision Solutions. Find out who inherited his estate. While Marcus waited for information, back at Mrs. Jenkins's house, something wonderful was happening. Jasmine was sitting up in bed for the first time in days. Her fever had broken during the night, and although she was still weak, the color was returning to her cheeks. Miss Keisha is really something special, Jasmine said to Mrs. Jenkins, who was bringing her a tray of breakfast. I don't know how to thank her for what she's done for us. Keisha has the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known, Mrs. Jenkins said, setting the tray down. Just like her uncle, that man would give his last dollar to a stranger in need. I heard her talking on the phone this morning, Jasmine said carefully. Something about her uncle being rich. Was that true? Mrs. Jenkins smiled mysteriously. Child, there's a lot about Keisha Bryant that would surprise you. But that's her story to tell, not mine. Little Theodore came running into the room, his face bright with excitement. Mama, Mama. Mrs. Jenkins says I can help her make cookies today, real cookies with chocolate chips. Jasmine laughed, and it was the sweetest sound in the world. That sounds wonderful, baby. You be good and listen to everything Mrs. Jenkins tells you, okay? I will, Mama. I promise. As Theodore ran off to the kitchen, Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. 2 weeks ago, I thought my son and I were going to die on the streets. I thought there was no hope left in the world. Then Keisha Bryant came along and changed everything. Mrs. Jenkins patted her hand. That's what angels do, child. They show up when you need them most. At the hospital across town, Tyrell Bryant was waking up from his unconscious state. His head throbbed with pain, and when he tried to move his hands, he realized they were handcuffed to the bed railing. A police officer stood guard by the door. What's going on? Tyrell croaked, his throat dry and scratchy. A nurse hurried to his side with a cup of water. Mr. Bryant, you were attacked in your home yesterday. You have a concussion and some bruised ribs, but you're going to be okay. The police need to ask you some questions when you're ready. The memories came flooding back. The masked men are breaking down his door. the punches and kicks. Veronica was screaming as they dragged her away, the note they shoved into his tied hands before they knocked him out. "Veronica," he gasped. "Where is Veronica? Is she okay?" The nurse exchanged a look with the police officer. "I'm sorry, Mr. Bryant. Your wife wasn't at the scene when the ambulance arrived. The police are still looking for her." Tyrell felt his whole world crumbling. Veronica was gone. The money was gone. Everything he had thrown away his marriage for was gone. And then a horrible thought crossed his mind. The men who took Veronica had asked about the money. They knew about the $50 million. Next, they knew Veronica had stolen it, which meant Veronica had been lying to him all along. There had never been a rich uncle. There had never been a legitimate inheritance. Veronica had stolen the money from criminals, and now those criminals wanted it back. Tyrell started laughing. It was a bitter, broken sound that made the nurse step back in alarm. He had divorced Keisha, the kindest and most loyal woman he had ever known, for a thief. He had thrown away 15 years of marriage for a lie. And now he was handcuffed to a hospital bed while his new wife was in the hands of dangerous criminals. This was karma. This was justice. This was exactly what he deserved. The police officer approached his bed. "Mr. Bryant, I'm Detective Washington. I need to ask you some questions about what happened yesterday." Tyrell closed his eyes. "I'll tell you everything. But first, I need to make a phone call. I need to call my ex-wife. I need to tell her I'm sorry." Detective Washington raised an eyebrow. "Your ex-wife? Keisha Bryant?" "Yes, please. I need to talk to her. I've been such a fool." Back at the law office, Keisha's phone rang. She looked at the number and was surprised to see it was from the hospital. "Hello?" "Keisha, it's Tyrell." She almost hung up right then, but something in his voice made her pause. He sounded different. Broken. "What do you want, Tyrell?" "I want to say I'm sorry," Tyrell said, and his voice cracked with emotion. "I'm so sorry, Keisha. For everything. For the divorce, for Veronica, for trying to take your money. I was a fool. The biggest fool who ever lived." Keisha didn't know what to say. She had dreamed of hearing Tyrell apologize for so long. But now that it was happening, she felt strangely empty. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked quietly. "Because I finally see the truth. Veronica lied to me about everything. The money was stolen. There was no rich uncle. I threw away the best thing in my life for a lie. And now Veronica is gone, taken by the people she stole from. And I can't even help her because I'm handcuffed to a hospital bed." Tyrell started crying. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I needed you to know that I know what I did was wrong. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry." Keisha was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised even herself. "I forgive you, Tyrell." "What?" "I forgive you. Not because you deserve it. Not because what you did was okay. I forgive you because holding on to anger only hurts me, not you. My uncle taught me that. He said that forgiveness isn't a gift you give to others. It's a gift you give to yourself." Tyrell was sobbing now. "Keisha, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. But I need you to know something, Tyrell. I'm going to save Veronica. Not for you, and not for her. I'm going to save her because it's the right thing to do. And when this is over, I want you to get help. I want you to become the man you were always capable of being. Can you do that?" "Yes," Tyrell whispered. "I promise I'll change. I'll be better." "Good. Now get some rest. This will all be over soon." Keisha hung up the phone and took a deep breath. Forgiving Tyrell had lifted a weight off her shoulders that she didn't even know she had been carrying. Her phone rang again. This time it was Marcus Steele. "I have verified your information, Miss Bryant. You are indeed worth 1.3 trillion, I must admit. I am impressed. Do we have a deal, Mr. Steele?" Marcus's voice was smooth and dangerous. "I have a counter-proposal. Instead of $50 million, I want $500 million. And instead of surrendering to the police, I want safe passage to a country with no extradition treaty. In return, I'll release Veronica, and I'll never bother you again." Keisha had expected this. Greedy people always want more. "That's not going to happen, Mr. Steele. My offer stands as it was. $50 million, Veronica's safe release, and your surrender to authorities. Take it or leave it." "Then I leave it," Marcus said coldly. "And I will find another way to get what I want from you, Miss Bryant, starting with the people you care about. That old woman you're staying with, the sick mother, and her little boy. They look like nice people. It would be a shame if something happened to them." Keisha's blood turned to ice. "If you touch any of them, I will destroy you." Bold words for a school teacher. We'll see how bold you are when I start making good on my promises. The line went dead. Keisha jumped to her feet. He knows about Mrs. Jenkins and Jasmine and Theodore. He's going to go after them. Agent Morgan was already on her phone calling for backup. "I'm sending units to Mrs. Jenkins's house right now. We'll get them to safety." But deep in her heart, Keisha knew that police protection wasn't enough. Marcus Steele had connections everywhere. He had eyes everywhere. If he wanted to hurt the people she loved, he would find a way. She needed to end this tonight. "Mr. Crawford," she said, her voice hard with determination. "Tell the security team to move in on the warehouse. We're rescuing Veronica now." "But Miss Bryant, we haven't finished planning. It's too risky." "I don't care about the risk. Marcus Steele just threatened the people I love. He's not going to stop until someone stops him. And that someone is going to be me." She grabbed her coat and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Agent Morgan called after her. Keisha turned around, and there was fire in her eyes. "I'm going to pay Mr. Steele a personal visit, and I'm going to show him what happens when you threaten the people I love. This is it, the showdown. Smash that like and subscribe button if you're Team Keisha. Comment where you're watching from and whether you think she can pull this off. Let's go." Keisha walked out of the office and into the night. In exactly 1 hour, the Montgomery warehouse would become a battleground, and nothing would ever be the same again. The warehouse loomed in front of her like a sleeping monster. The security team had already taken their positions around the perimeter, invisible in the darkness. Agent Morgan and her FBI team were on standby, ready to move in at Keisha's signal. But Keisha had insisted on going in first, alone. "This is insane," Agent Morgan had argued. "You're not trained for this. Let us handle it." "He'll kill Veronica the moment he sees you coming," Keisha had replied. "But he wants to meet me. He wants to see if I'm real. That's our advantage." Now, standing at the warehouse door, Keisha took a deep breath and pushed it open. The rusty hinges screamed in protest. "Mr. Steele?" she called out. "It's Keisha Bryant. I'm here to negotiate." A light flickered on in the center of the warehouse. There sat Veronica, tied to a chair, mascara running down her face. Behind her stood Marcus Steele, a gun in his hand. "Miss Bryant," Marcus said, his voice echoing through the space. "I'm impressed. You actually came, alone, just as I instructed." "I came to make a deal," Keisha said, walking slowly toward them. $50 million for Veronica's life and your surrender." Marcus laughed. "Did you bring the money?" "It's in an offshore account, ready to transfer the moment Veronica is safe, and you're in police custody." "You still don't understand, do you?" Marcus raised the gun and pointed it at Veronica's head. "I don't negotiate. I take what I want." "Then you're going to have a problem," Keisha said calmly, "because what you want is locked behind codes that only I know. Kill her, kill me, and you get nothing. The money disappears into a charity foundation that will feed homeless children for the next century." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "You're bluffing." "Try me," Keisha said. "I've already lost everything once this month. I'm not afraid to lose money I never asked for. But I am giving you one last chance to do the right thing. Take the $50 million, turn yourself in, and in 15 years, you'll be a free man with money waiting for you. Or shoot us both and spend the rest of your life running from every bounty hunter my lawyers will send after you with my $1 trillion fortune." For the first time, Marcus Steele looked uncertain. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you save her? She destroyed your marriage. She's a thief, just like me." "Because my uncle taught me that how I treat my enemies says more about who I am than how I treat my friends," Keisha said softly. "And I choose to be someone who values life over revenge." The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, Marcus lowered the gun. "You're either the wisest person I've ever met or the biggest fool," he said. "But I believe you. Make the transfer." Keisha pulled out her phone and made a series of calls. Within minutes, Mr. Crawford confirmed that $50 million had been deposited into a secure trust fund, accessible only after Marcus Steele served his sentence. Marcus untied Veronica, who collapsed to the floor, sobbing. "The FBI is outside," Keisha said. "They'll take you into custody now. My lawyers will represent you at trial, just as I promised." Marcus walked toward the door, then paused. "Your uncle was right, Miss Bryant. You're richer than I'll ever be." As the FBI agent stormed in and took Marcus into custody, Keisha knelt beside Veronica. "Thank you," Veronica whispered. "I don't deserve this. I don't deserve your help." "No," Keisha agreed. "You don't. But that's not how kindness works." 6 months later, Pinehurst had changed in ways no one could have imagined. The new Hope Haven Community Center stood where the old shelter used to be. It was a beautiful 3-story building with a medical clinic on the first floor, emergency housing on the second floor, and a job training center on the third floor. Above the entrance, a bronze plaque read, "In memory of Theodore James Bryant, a man who knew that true wealth lives in the heart." Keisha stood at the grand opening ceremony, watching as little Theodore and his mother Jasmine cut the ribbon. Jasmine was healthy now, working as a nurse at the clinic. Theodore was thriving in school, talking about becoming a doctor when he grew up. "Miss Keisha! Miss Keisha!" Theodore ran over and hugged her tight. "My mama says you're a guardian angel." "Your mama's very kind," Keisha said, smiling. "But I'm just someone who had the resources to help and chose to use them." Mrs. Jenkins stood beside her, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Theodore would be so proud of you, child. Look at what you've built. Look at all the lives you've changed." It wasn't just the community center. In 6 months, Keisha had funded full scholarships for 500 underprivileged students, opened 3 more shelters in neighboring towns, started a program to forgive medical debt for low-income families, built a state-of-the-art wing at Pinehurst Elementary School. And she had done it all quietly, just like Uncle Theodore. Living in her modest teacher's apartment and continuing to teach her 3rd graders every day. Across town, Tyrell was attending his court-mandated therapy sessions and working at a community garden, trying to rebuild his life and atone for his mistakes. He had signed over all claims to any of Keisha's money and publicly apologized for his actions. The divorce was final, and he was learning to live with his choices. Veronica had been sentenced to 5 years in prison for money laundering and fraud. But she had also testified against Marcus Steele's criminal network, helping the FBI take down dozens of other criminals. Keisha had hired lawyers to ensure she got the lightest possible sentence, and had promised her a job at the Hope Haven Center when she was released. Marcus Steele was serving 20 years, with the possibility of parole after 15 if he maintained good behavior. True to her word, Keisha's lawyers had gotten him the best defense possible, and the $50 million sat in a trust fund waiting for him. As the sun set over Pinehurst, Keisha walked through the community center, watching families find hope and help. She thought about Uncle Theodore and his secret empire, and she finally understood why he had lived the way he did. Money could build buildings and fund programs, but real wealth, true wealth, was in the smile of a child who had a warm bed to sleep in the tears of a mother who could finally get medical care, in the gratitude of a community that had been shown unconditional kindness. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Mr. Crawford. The anonymous donation to the Children's Hospital has been approved. Construction begins next month. Keisha smiled. She had $199 trillion left to give away, and she was just getting started. Uncle Theodore, she whispered, looking up at the stars. I hope I'm making you proud. Somewhere, somehow, she knew he was smiling. Wow, what a journey. If this story touched your heart, please do these 3 things. Smash that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message about kindness and forgiveness, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss another incredible story from Heart Vault Stories. Comment below and tell me, where were you watching from today? What was your favorite part of the story? Should I make more stories like this? And remember, true wealth isn't in your pocket, it's in your heart. Be kind, be generous, and be the change you want to see in the world. I'll see you in the next video. God bless.